Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition. And this is Midday with Reverend Don. Welcome. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments into whatever platform you happen to be watching on, and they will show up here in my chat room. The chat room is on the screen today since I do not have a guest, and we can talk directly that way. And I hope you're having a lovely day. Today is the day of the equinox. In the northern hemisphere, this is the Sabbat of Ostara, and in the southern hemisphere, it is the Sabbat of Mabon. And I put that wrong into the title, but I do know that it is Mabon. And hello to Black Crystal in the chat room, and hello to Corey Judy in the chat room. So, again, today is Ostara or Mabon. I accidentally put Lammas into the title because I was working awfully quickly. Let me see if I can do anything with that. I cannot at this moment. But I wanted to talk today a little bit about the meaning of those Sabbats and what they have to do with our lives. And, to some extent, as you will see, this has a little bit to do with the kind of thing we've been talking about all week. And hello to Swag Fan in the chat room. So these two Sabbats, well, let me back up and say that for many years now, I have made a habit of considering the two opposite Sabbats at the same time, on the premise that when I'm doing online ritual, and we'll be doing our online ritual on Sunday, when I'm doing online ritual, we'll have people from both hemispheres. So we must honor both Sabbats. But what I found very quickly is that looking at the Sabbat this way provided a lot of additional insight into its meaning. And hello to Janet Winston in the chat room. It's good to see you, Janet. I found that considering, for example, Beltane and Samhain together expanded a bit on my understanding. It's examining Imbolc and Lammas together expanded a little bit on my understanding of them, and certainly Ostara and Mabon. And hello to Reverend Michael in the chat room. It's good to see you, Michael. I believe Michael is off on an adventure at this moment, so I hope you're having a good time, Michael. The Festival of Ostara it's the spring festival. In modern reckoning, it's considered the start of spring. In traditional reckoning, it is the high point of spring, the middle point of spring, if you would. But it's the time to celebrate the return of life in the world. The flowering blossoms and the budding trees and the little birds and bunnies and what have you that are busily multiplying in the coming spring. Whereas Mabon is a celebration of harvest, the opposite end of the year. It is a time to consider the harvest, and in my practice at least, it's a time to consider the harvest of your life. It's a Sabbat that is dedicated in part to the concept of karma and justice, and looking at how you have gotten where you are and where you want to go from there. So one celebrates beginnings, and the other celebrates results. And I think this is a very relevant thing to consider in terms of our daily lives. Everything we begin will eventually have a result. And every result is coming from something that was once just a beginning. And if, when we're beginning things, we stop and think about what the likely results are going to be, I think we'll be happier with what we get. A lot of people take a lot of their actions based only on emotion without really stopping to think about the outcome of their actions, or they don't think very deeply about it. And to me, these two Sabbats both speak to the need to consider our actions. And there's an often repeated trope um, about Native Americans, as if Native Americans could be spoken of as a monolith, which they cannot, but nonetheless, for the purpose of the trope, the idea that Native Americans consider their actions in terms of the next 7 generations, which, if you think about it, is quite a tall order, but still not a bad idea. When you think about things, it's good to not only think about the immediate result, but the long-term results. If our current culture thought about long-term results, we'd be in a very different world. We'd be in a very different moment because, I watch the things happening in the world and I can't help but think that people are not considering, the people who are taking the actions are not considering the long-term results, only getting what they want in the moment. And hello to Christopher. Christopher Urrutia in the chat room. It's good to see you. And Christopher says, "Greetings, Professor." Well, thank you. One of the things that I try to do is think in the longer term. And am I always successful in doing that? Not necessarily. But I try. And the longer term survival and prosperity of myself, my community, my family, tends to be where I try to put my emphasis. And sometimes that means a less favorable position in the moment. And more than once, this has paid off very well for me. There have been a number of times where I have made extreme sacrifices to accomplish a particular goal and seen that goal become successful and pay back those sacrifices many times. It would have been much easier in the short term not to make those sacrifices. But then that long term would not have been there. One of the things I often look at in my life are the number of political skirmishes I've found myself in, and I think anyone who's in a position of leadership will understand what I'm saying. But I found myself in a number of political skirmishes over the years, and I've often asked myself, was this necessary? Was it important? And the answer that I come up with is, for the long term, yes, it was a necessary unpleasantness that created problems in the short term in order to build a stable long term. And Corey Judy says, "I have to upgrade my account with you. I'll be right back." Okay. I'm assuming, I'm not sure what account Judy is referring to, but upgrade away. Because most of the platforms that you're likely to be watching this on, probably on Facebook or YouTube, but it could also be a Witch School account. It could be a Patreon account. I don't know. Anyway, one of the things I often come back to is describing myself as a grinder. Oh, it was her account with Patreon. That's wonderful. Thank you, Judy. I appreciate that. And for those of you who are not familiar, I have a Patreon, which you can find at revdonlewis.com. And if you want to support my work, the best way to do that is to join the Patreon. And that is the primary support for a lot of what I do. And Corey says, "I love your lectures. You're so resourceful." And I love your lectures. You're so resourceful. On certain demeanors of witchcraft and superiority, I love it. Well, thank you, Thank you, Judy. I try to always have something decent to say. In fact, it was remarked about me just yesterday that in daily life, I don't say a lot, but when I do, it's usually worth listening to. And hello to Nikki in the chat room. It's good to see you. And Nikki says hello from a cold but sunny Tulsa. And I was raised with the idea, and we were talking a few minutes ago about the error of speaking of Native Americans as being monolithic. Uh, Native America is composed of many cultures, some of which are very different from one another. Oh, and Christopher says, yes, I've watched Witch School for years. It's great. Thank you, Christopher. One of the major enterprises of my life. And watch for news through the coming months of our planned event on Harry Potter weekend here in Danville, which will be the first weekend in November. But I'm a great believer in the idea of saying what's important. And hello to Mary in the chat room. It's good to see you. Probably too much a believer in that. I'm not especially good at small talk, but I was not raised that way. I was raised to be a listener, and when I speak, I usually have something to say. I'm not the person who will just talk on about the weather or something like that. I much prefer to talk about what Lady Bitterwind used to call the witchness of the why things are as they are. And to me, that is a fascinating thing. And I think that trying to understand why the world is what the world is, why we are as we are, is a fascinating subject. And Magical Mermaid says, good day, every human and familiar. And hello, Magical Mermaid. And I love to see everyone in the chat room. Coming back to our main subject today, and continuing on the witchness of the why, when we look at Ostara and the beginnings of actions, and when we look at Mabon and the results of actions, it puts action in a different light if you're looking at it from both ends. Again, so many people take actions without ever thinking about their results, without asking themselves, what is this going to lead to? And then they wonder how they got there. And granted, it is an art to think about what you're going to do before you do it. It is an art to choose your actions based on their probable results, but it's an art that's well worth developing. I have watched people create incredible messes by not thinking about the results of their actions, by not thinking about how people would react to their actions. And I could list a few of them, but that would probably be controversial. But I've watched people destroy entire careers on a single negative comment that they didn't really think about. It gave them an emotional satisfaction at the time. And Mary says, have you mentioned the ritual on Sunday? And I'm not certain if I did, but as Mary points out, we will be having our Ostara Mabon ritual this coming Sunday here on whatever platform you're watching on Corellian TV. And Mary and I will be leading the ritual with our troupe of of intrepid ritualists, and it will be great fun. I hope that you'll join us for that. And as I was saying earlier, it will be honoring both Sabbats, Ostara here in the northern hemisphere and Mabon in the southern hemisphere. And um, yeah, I hope that you will join us for that. And we do online rituals for every Sabbat, and sometimes for special occasions. And it's a lot of fun in its way. And I've been doing this, I don't know how many years now. Before we did video ritual, we did audio ritual through the internet radios. Oh, and Black Crystal says yes, he did, and it's already on my calendar. Yay! Um, I can remember years ago on Pagans Tonight Radio doing audio ritual, which is where I first started combining the Sabbats. Um, Sabbat ritual has been a constant in my life for a very long time. When I was doing Holy City Temple in Chicago, we did an average of 65 rituals each year, um, of which only a few were Sabbat rituals. Um, but we did every one of them. And back in those days, we would do our own ritual, and then I would go out to 2 to 3 other rituals in temples in the community because we were heavily involved in the community. And I would go to, for example, the Temple of Sacred Stones, Panthea Temple, um, sometimes Moonbeat's Temple, um, various other temples that were thriving at that time, often to the Lyceum of Eleusis for the FOI, although they have a different ritual calendar. And it was very interesting. And Corey asks, Reverend Don, when is your next auction on Whatnot? The next one currently scheduled will be May 9th, and it will be an artwork auction. And it's going to be an artwork showing, followed by the auction at 5 p.m. on May 9th. And I hope that you will join us for that. And Corey says, you had a couple of books I've been looking at I want to purchase. Go to our eBay site or to our webpage and see if you might be able to just go ahead and buy them there and not have to wait for an auction or instant messages on Facebook. And we will be happy to help you with that. I'm sure there will be another Whatnot auction before May 9th, but it's not scheduled yet. But on May 9th, we're going to have a lot of original artwork that I'm currently working on, as well as prints of my artwork going for auction. And most of those you'll be able to bid in advance on. Probably they'll start going up next week. And I'm kind of looking forward to that. It is a great love of mine to do artwork, but I often find myself doing everything else. So it'll be nice to be able to focus on that for a little while. As you know, I recently brought out Rev Don's Book of Stones, Metals, and Crystals. We're waiting on it to arrive from the publisher, and then it will go out to everyone who ordered it. And I did some original artwork for that, which will probably be part of this auction. And that was fun. I did charts of some of the body's meridians, but after the style of Alphonse Mucha. They don't look like Muchas, but they're inspired by Muchas, and that's what you do as an artist. You don't ideally, at least, copy someone's style. You're inspired by it to do something similar. In this case, elegant figures with lots of drapery, but and flowers. Those tend to be the hallmarks of Mucha. And there are a lot of artists who have influenced my work, and this is how the subject of our program tends to wander sometimes. But I think I'll take a moment. I was very strongly influenced as a child by the works of Botticelli. My parents bought me when they saw that I was interested in artwork, which is an interest in my family. When they saw that I was interested in artwork and loved to draw and to do artwork, they bought me books on artwork. And some of the earliest ones were books on Botticelli, Da Vinci, Michelangelo, and I particularly resonated to Botticelli. And I remember going through that book countless times and basically adapting a number of his principles, which I think you still see in my artwork. Even though I wouldn't say it looks like his artwork, but it's influenced by it. I was also given a wonderful book on Japanese artwork, and in my way, I was very heavily influenced by ukiyo-e artwork. And if you're not familiar with ukiyo-e artwork, it is printed artwork from 17th and 18th century Japan, and it has a very strong linear quality matched with progressively strong colors. And I was very strongly influenced, certainly, by that. And although my particular way of drawing doesn't particularly resemble ukiyo-e, I think you can see the influence very strongly. And of course, I was also influenced by Mucha, although at a later point, and by Art Nouveau in general. But I studied all of it, and in my life, if I've liked anything, I've tended to study it and find out everything I could about it, and I recommend that. And with artwork, it is an endless field of study. I mean, the more you know, the more there is to learn. One of the things I follow lately is called Moon Honey Jewelry on Instagram. And this is a young woman who discusses historic jewelry with photos of the pieces, and also talks about different gemstones. And it's a fascinating thing. And I'd have to say that, I frequently learn new things from it, because she goes to the farthest ends of archaeology to bring forth these interesting pieces. And the things that humanity has done in its history, artistically and otherwise, are endlessly fascinating. Now, I'll add to that the things that humanity has done socially in its history are often endlessly horrifying, but that's part, I guess, of being human also. In the end, we're not exactly the softest, fluffiest bears in the bin. And we have a tendency to do horrible things. And I guess we can't be entirely surprised when that comes back to the surface. But as spiritual people, part of our role is to heal and transmute that, to make that less of a thing. And I think that's very important as we go forward. I think that working on that deep whatever it is in humanity is a big part of spirituality. Even if we're only working on ourselves, I think when we work on ourselves, we help everything. I'm a great believer in the idea that even if all you do is heal one piece, that still kind of lifts everything up and will tend to influence other pieces. It's like the peace campaign that I often come back to, which is still thriving 10 years later. And do we have perfect peace? Absolutely not. Arguably, things in the world have degenerated considerably. However, if we weren't doing it, might they have degenerated more? It doesn't matter that we cannot have perfect peace overnight and perhaps at all, but we can have more piece. We can make things better, whether we can make them perfect or not. And, to choose not to make something better because you can't make it ideal is foolish, in my opinion. I've seen a lot of people do it. Um, I'm not good enough to paint the picture I want to paint, so I won't paint anything, is not in any way constructive. Um, the truth is, the person who thinks they're not good enough to paint what they want to paint, if they would take the time to try it, might find that they could develop a distinct style that would be worthwhile in itself, even though it might not be whatever style had inspired them. I think that stopping yourself because you can't be perfect is a terrible thing to do. We can never be perfect. It's not really part of being human. Yet you see people do this all the time. So, with that, I see that we're coming down to the end of our half hour, so I want to take a moment for a word from our sponsors. Hello, this is Rev Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and I would like to invite you to my Don Art showing and auction on Friday, May 9th, with original pieces and prints of my artwork and other interesting items, with the auction at 5 p.m. on Whatnot. And please stay tuned for more announcements and examples of art that will be coming. Thank you. And thank you to our sponsors, Equinox Learning Hub, and our Gaia Thrift auctions on Whatnot. And I hope that you're having a lovely day. I hope you have a lovely week. And I want to wish you again a happy Ostara and Mabon. And let us close with our prayer, as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we rejoice in this walk we walk together, and we ask you to help us to consider the results of our actions and to always be able to do the next right thing to take us to where we want to be. Help us to build the better world we want to see, beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors. We thank you with great love, knowing you are always with us, still from respect. We thank you for your presence. May you be blessed now and always. And thank you for your presence. And we'll be back tomorrow. I hope you'll join us then. And may you be blessed now and always.